Ladies and gentlemen, our next section will begin in 2 minutes. Would you please be seated? Thank you. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We'll now proceed to the section on crisis management in the digital economy, dealing with cyber threats. Cyber threats are an omnipresent danger to businesses. Effective crisis management is critical to mitigate the impact of cyber attacks and prevent further damage. And this preparation sometimes goes beyond cyber incident response to address the entire crisis. In this section, we welcome questions from the audience and encourage interaction. So whether you are on site or participating virtually, please feel free to sign into Zoom and type your question into the Q&A pod. When you registered earlier to attend the forum, you'd have received the Zoom link for this section on email. So just retrieve the link from there. Thank you. Now, may I pass the floor to Mr. Morris Wangs. He is Head of Incubation, Engineering, Zero Trust, and Secure Services Edge of Cisco EMEA. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Morris Wangs.
See all of you in the room. So when they came up with that topic, I said like, oh bloody hell, they are going to open Pandora's box for me, because like I'm a critical thinker and I'm always want to start solutions, and that is always like, all right, that is a very broad topic. And they said like, you can talk about everything. And I said like, okay, let's talk about a human touch. So that's normally the moment when marketing is starting to get sweaty hands and saying like, oh, damn, he's getting on stage and he's having like a presentation, and he was able to dodge all the marketing slides. So that is like where they are asking me at least put in a disclaimer, so that that's my personal opinion. It's not necessarily reflect all the company on that side. So let me introduce myself a bit. Who am I? I'm Moritz Wenz, as you heard. I'm the head of incubation engineering in EMEA. So we are incubating technologies like zero trust and secure access or secure services edges. For Cisco, I'm with Cisco for over 15 years, long time Cisco person. I'm a Cisco Live speaker, as you can see, which makes me always personally proud, because that is like kind of pretty heavy on duty for like getting it sorted. I'm living in beautiful Switzerland. I picked pictures with snow because like I thought tropical climate with snow would be a little bit of a refreshing part. And we are doing a lot of skiing in Switzerland, of course. All right, so digital transformation, that is like actually something which is a really interesting topic in general, because like what we are always talking about is like digitalizing like corporations, and they are pretty much like did a good job on some parts. Governments are struggle a bit, at least in EMEA with that. We are seeing some pockets of success where we are really talking about like a really digitalized like cooperation or like public services, especially when we are talking about like Estonia or like some parts, Switzerland as well, is very digitalized already. But what does it mean, especially when we are looking into like the overall readiness of a country? That is why Cisco is providing like a digital readiness compass, where we would say, okay, like get in there, let's have a look into like, okay, where you are with that and where your country is and what we are seeing like as a digital ready country or digital ready economy for it. And especially because like economy is set so much on the level of trust, where we are saying like, okay, digitized doesn't necessarily mean it's a digital economy. And what we are seeing, especially in Europe, is like it is kindly digitized, but we are still very analog on a lot of those ways, right? We are still producing a lot of goods and services, but it's not that we are like really leading in a digital economy in a classical way. Okay, we have Spotify and we have a couple of other like companies in that space, but really truly digitized, we are not, right? We are still lagging behind that pretty heavily. And that is like where we are basically seeing the age of ChatGPT as a tremendous chance. Like sign of hands, ChatGPT, who's using it today? That's a lot. Still more to come. It went mainstream right now. Everyone is a little bit afraid of it, and everyone is screaming like this is going to kill a lot of jobs, and it's probably very true. It also provides a lot of really good answers on a couple of topics, especially around like, as like John mentioned yesterday, around like the future of DNS and what it brings, which is interesting. It brings also a lot of questions around like, okay, what can we do with that? And a lot of people are not having a really good idea about that, and they're still thinking like it's a threat for us in general. And then some people are coming up and saying like, hey, there's actually something really cool, we can start it and we can getting really creative on it. And then you see use cases that like some lawyers are putting up cases and they're let ChatGPT generate those cases for them to justify their case with the other cases which they generated with ChatGPT, and that is getting something really interesting. But in most of the cases with our organization, we are seeing like that they are like really want to block that stuff out of their network, and they don't want to have it because of all those data privacy issues where we are pretty heavily involved, not only because of GDPR, but because of like several other countries which are giving us like the same market access problems, especially like Saudi Arabia, parts of non-EU countries, part of my country where I'm living in Switzerland, with a huge banking industry, which is pretty much built on confidence, around trust that we are not sending out any data out of the country, which gives us like a huge challenge with ChatGPT, even if you are seeing also huge opportunities with it. So it really picked up like pretty quickly, which I find pretty interesting. I didn't have it on my radar, to be honest, and it's a good reason why it wasn't on my content or on my agenda before, because it's mostly done for content generators, which are getting now crazy with that stuff. I'm not sure if you like have looked into YouTube on what they're producing with that, and if you seeing like all the benefits of it and what is done on the content creating side with that. And that's something which is like getting very interesting. It gets like a lot of really good answers on like ideas, right? It helps you really finding stuff. Even if I don't think it's AI, but it's more machine learning. I'm a huge fan of machine learning instead of AI. Turing machine says hello. But there's also other AI tools which I'm seeing, or which are coming up and which are getting used pretty heavily by this industry in general, right? And if you probably have seen this guy, I've never heard about this label before, Balenciaga, anyone? Like I was looking it up, and this is like, Balenciaga is like a very, let's say, controversial Italian brand for like fashion design. And the reason why I never heard about it, it's like because a t-shirt is around $850. And I said like, all right, if someone pays like $850 for a t-shirt, I hope nobody is wearing one. It's like kind of crazy. But there was like one guy on the internet who started like with several AI tools and created like, and he said basically, okay, how can I create something completely crazy? And as far as I know, that was not created by their marketing department. That was like basically the guy coming up and saying like, tell me the 10 most known characters from Harry Potter. So this is Harry Potter. And put them into Balenciaga clothes, create it like Balenciaga, and give them, based on their speeches and based on what is recorded from their voices, give them exactly the voices with content I created for them. It's still a little bit, it looks a little bit bizarre. I can totally recommend looking it up because it's super interesting. It's not only Harry Potter, it's like everything. To all the gamers in you, it's like even Mortal Kombat and Super Mario, which I found pretty interesting, Enterprise as well. And it is like created within 30 minutes, right? So if you want to really get creative, you can create YouTube videos with, he created around like several of that, like he's making a S-load of money with that right now because of all the clicks, and like just repeating it over and over again. And I'm not sure if Balenciaga marketing is super happy about it, because it's out of their control, and probably some, let's say, trademarks infringements involved in here as well. So they are probably like super unhappy on the other sides because they're getting sued from Warner and from HBO and from Times, from ever, right? I mean, every media creator is like going at them right now, or at him. And he can say like, it's newly created content, it's creativity, et cetera, so he's kind of protected with it. But it's actually, he's making tons of money with it. Like, look it up, it's millions of clicks on those videos. So with that, there comes a lot of drawbacks around that, right? And now it's like, sorry, I'm German, so I'm very critical on everything. And I don't have any humor, but that's a side note. But there comes also like a lot of drawbacks on the AI part. And that is like where we are like identifying like the drawbacks for us, where we are seeing like, okay, this AI doesn't care about like any ethics or any biases or anything like that, right? I mean, it's like there was this AI project when it became racist within 3 days, which was kind of interesting, when they just said like, let's go for it, and it started machine learning, and it became like completely out of scope because nobody is teaching them ethics, right? It just consumes content, and if you're putting something in a bubble of information, it will only consume this bubble of information, and it's hard to get out of this bubble of information, right? So it's like, then how do you really get more and other perspectives to it, and how do you recognize it, right? And this is like what's really, really hard on that side of the business in general with AIs and what we are seeing. So there were drawbacks, and then it became a nightmare. So this is like me talking about security, because like what we are seeing with that right now, it's so tremendously good in writing phishing emails and scam emails. So we had this discussion about DNS abuse. We had the discussion around like, okay, what can we do against it? And I'm probably saying like, we can't do a lot against it because it's freaking good in scamming and phishing and everything around it. Because it's, first of all, extremely good in wording and putting like content together. It freaks me out when I'm seeing like, okay, how easy it is to get it created. And in the past, it was like, for us, it was easier because like German is like one of those languages in which not a lot of people are talking to, and like even writing it is even harder than talking. So it was for us, it was like always like, there's a scam email coming in, because like he was like messing it up on like all the language pieces, right? So it was easy to identify, at least for us. And now it's like, all right, I have a problem. And that is like what we are seeing, especially in the German-speaking parts and all the other speaking or like different language-speaking parts in Europe, as a huge threat for us coming in, because like our spam gateways, our like protection mechanisms, which are based on like just behavior analytics, are getting down in the detection rates from every vendor, because it's so highly customized that you can't detect it anymore. It is one email, it's like targeted at your finance person, or not even on the finance person. We had several cases where just like the personal assistant of the CFO was targeted with like a faked identity, saying, can you please like send 100,000 to this specific person, because like we had this part of like a contract with them, and this is like the faked invoice. And it happens. And everyone who knows like legals and banking, if you are sending money, you don't get it back. If it is a credit card fraud, happy days, $50 and off you are. But like in really sending the money, that's like a legally binding term that the other needs to send it back. And if you ever have tried to ask the scammer to send back your money, that's probably a very unlikely event which is going to happen. Yeah. So in that regards, like security-wise, it became a total nightmare for us as like securities professionals. And that is like bringing it to the point that everyone thinks like, oh, my SOC looks like this, right? A lot of monitors, one guy, it's mostly, most of the times one guy, I can tell. And he's like there 24/7, he's like taking care of it, and he's really going for it. He's so well trained, he has so many backups, he has all the tools he needs, he has all the budget he needs. And like, who's seeing this reality? Sign of hand? Oh, you're very brave, I need to talk to you. But that is not the reality in most of the cases. It's more like that, right? So it's like we are talking about like thousands of events, we are talking about like understaffed operations, we are talking about not the right level of tools. And this is like when any of you like looked into log files or event data for like 6 hours more than a day and did this for like 2 years, he's probably either on the way to a zombie or like totally into it. I'm looking for the people which are really totally into it, but mostly it's like zombie stage already. I did it for some time and I was like totally burning out on that part. And it's like crazy. And that is like why we are like really making it so complex, right? I mean, it's like there's some trivial parts, right? And as we are always talking about like domain names, so DNS, we are talking about IPs. Hash values is probably the easiest one. But as farther we go up, we are getting more complications in the SOC and in the parts of the really setting it up, and especially on TTPs. Anyone knows what TTP is? Basically tools, procedures and processes. You can sometimes call it TPP or TTP. And that is like the part of like, okay, I have a SOC, I have a process, and my process needs to work all the time, and I have described it all fine, and it's in my emergency planning, and everyone knows about where to find it. It's on SharePoint, it's password protected, and someone forgot the password, and someone doesn't know what to do anymore because it's not well documented, because we had some gaps, we had some new parts in that in the security measurements, and that was like really then messing it up. And someone forgot to shut down network segments when the ransomware was attacking the network, and then the whole network went fine, and then everyone was on fire, and it's painful. It's extremely painful to really even test those kind of processes in your organization. As bigger it gets, it's more complicated it gets. Not talking even about unmanaged network or network devices in your networks. And that is like why we are really trying to help. And how we are doing this, specifically with Cisco, is that we are have a research organization on our own, Cisco Talos. Cisco Talos is like a privately funded research organization where we are basically combining threat intelligence informations. And maybe you probably know, we have one of the biggest DNS and IP reputation database in the world. Maybe 1 or 2 people have heard about it. If not, you all have heard today. So we are really trying to give actionable like threat intelligence to the community to really make sure that you are making like informed decisions around what you want to do and how an event is to be classified. It has a couple of drawbacks, of course, right? It's like not only IP, it's not only DNS, what you need to do specifically on that parts of security, and even consuming it is like sometimes even more complicated, because like a lot of customers which I'm seeing, like they don't have even the chance of like getting the right level of information stitched together, right? We are talking about like CMs, XDR as a new term of it, or like really tools of like getting them consumed. And most of the times, and this is something which I see, especially with CM customers, is like when they are implementing a CM, they are stuck for years because like they are starting to really remove like false positives. They are starting to implement the processes, the playbooks, the automation, talking about IP or like automation, and that is like always like coming back to the AI discussion. How much can AI or machine learning really help me with that? In a regular basis, it can help me with like the standard stuff. But if I'm really looking into, okay, I need to do something, and my most favorite case, and this is like when we had a discussion with the SOC and said like, okay, how much can we automate? And they said like, dude, what do you want to automate? Like we had like a file, like one of our users were opening a file which had like a SharePoint link in there, which led to a document which was like outside of everything on an FTP, and it created such a security event, and I needed 6 hours to investigate it because that dude didn't pick up this telephone, right? And this is like sometimes really where it comes complicated to searching for it. And that is also why we are like so committed, and this is like giving back to the community in general. This is like why I like it so much, is like that we are providing a lot of tools which we want to provide to you as security or IT organizations. So Snort as an example. Anyone heard about Snort? That there's like this thing? Version 3, right? So we are just released the newest version of it over 1 or 2 years ago. ClamAV. Is everyone aware that we are having ClamAV? One person, thank you. Which is also like really helping with like building up your own rule sets, right? And this is like getting customized on security is getting even more important to really making sure that you are really preparing yourself with knowledge and informed knowledge around, okay, I can detect a cyber threat in my organization and can really make sure that we are going to a point that we can detect something which is highly customized, which is probably AI generated, where you probably need to ask an AI, is this AI is generated for me? Can we do something against it? But also like several other parts where we are saying like, okay, we can decrypt some of the ransomware tools. And that was actually one of the funniest stories which I ever had, because one of the ransomwares which we found where they said like, this is AES 256, no, it was even more, 1048. It was like highly decrypted and they forgot to decrypt it. So it was not decrypted. So it was just a tool like revamping the tools or the files because it was not decrypted. As I said, they had a mistake in the algorithms as an example. But this is really where we are getting to the point of like, okay, we really want to provide tools. But as you can see, there's a lot of tools which are available, which you need to learn. And this brings me back to the human touch with it. We need to have more people really getting trained on it. And we need to have more people really taking care of the security of a digitalized economy and of a digitalized corporation, and really seeing the opportunity with that. And with that, I'm probably done with my presentation and open for questions, which I heard I need to take at my booth, which is outside. So thank you so much for all your patience and for your time. Really appreciate it. All of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morris Wans. Please take your seats. Thank you. And now it is the Q&A with gift section. We are pleased to announce that those who answer correctly will win a special prize, an electronic gift. So later on the screen, we will show the QR code for you. Yes, here you go. So please scan it now, enter the WhatsApp chat room, and send your answer to us. The person who answers correctly and the fastest will be the winner. And our helper will then contact the winner and ask you to come to the stage front for gift redemption. So are you all ready? Let's see the question together. So the question is, security operations are effective and prepared for the consistently changing environment of threats for organizations. What do you think? A, yes, they have the right tools and trainings. Or B, no, they are understaffed and are challenged by not implemented process and procedures. Or C, maybe, I just hope they do the right things, but we are not attacked anyway. So please send us the answer right now, and our staff will contest the winner. Thank you so much for your participation. And now we'll proceed to the next sharing section. Unlocking the digital economy transformation. Is your cybersecurity framework robust enough to safeguard your future success? Indeed, a resilient and reliable transformation can only be achieved with a solid foundation of cybersecurity. The pace of transformation relies heavily on cyber resilience, efficiency, and agility. It is time to bring this topic to the forefront at layers of risk management and think about some next steps in cybersecurity strategy and approach. In this section, we also welcome questions from the audience. Now, please join me in welcoming Mr. Alan Lim, Head of Product Marketing at Sang4. Welcome, Alan.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. So I'm going to spend 20 to 25 minutes to share what we have and what we found for the past few years. Right. So in the context of digital transformation, right? So I would like to start a story. Right. So in last year, I worked with one of the customers. They are a retail company, right? So they want to bring their business online, which means to offer services to their customer. So they are riding the wave of digital transformations and try to digitalize their services at the same time. But what happened? So one day, we got a call from them that, they're telling us that one of the server actually gets attacked, all right, for no reason, right? Because they will open up so many surfaces to the internet, and they are very panicked most of the time. I mean, customer, when they get attacked, cyber attack, they wouldn't know what to do next, right? So some genius were suggesting them to just shut down the server. But they cannot do it. Why? Because they are running online business. And our downtime actually cost them 30,000 USD in loss, right? And not to mention that the reputation that they image, right? How their customer think about them. If I'm using your platform, I'm using your services, and you got hacked, is my data safe? So this is why that in a typical cyber attack, even though they are following some sort of cybersecurity framework, which I'm going to share later on, right? It doesn't really guarantee that they'll be safe 100%. Okay? So this is some of the attack cyber change that we've seen as a real world example. Right? So as a result, after our finding, right, there's not only one server, but there are 15 servers that get encrypted by ransomware. Of course, the data was breached at the same time. Okay? So over the last 3 years, in Singapore, we have a Singapore incident response team that's helping the customer in the event of they are suffering cyber attack. Right, so we had a team that spoke on that, and for the past 36 months, in APAC alone, we have helped more than 200 plus customers dealing with the responses, how to remediate the problem when they got attacked. So usually we'll spend a couple of days, 3 days, 2 days, right, just to identify the problem, to remediate the issue, and also we have a lot of interesting findings. Right, if you are interested, you actually can go to our website. We have a very insightful report that you can download that is includes some of the best practices that customer would like to have a look. Okay. So let me dive slightly into a typical attack. Right. So based on our finding, we found out that 90% of the company actually suffering the external attack from the network parameter, which means even though they have the firewall, they have EDR, but they still get breached at the same time. Okay, why? I will tell you later on. So I think you guys have seen this many times. NIST, is there anybody using NIST as a framework? Of course, it's one of the most popular cybersecurity framework that's widely adopted worldwide, right? And also on the left and the right, it's a bit blurred, but it's a MITRE ATT&CK enterprise framework. Okay, so they are helping us a lot when it comes to setting up the framework and providing some of the guidelines to our customer that what are the best practices they should use when they're dealing with cyber incident. Okay, but even though we still see a lot of cyber attack nowadays, right? So with the framework alone, it doesn't really help you to keep yourself safe. Why? Let me take an example for NIST framework, right? So 2 out of 5, the core functions are detect and respond, which means they are passive, reactive. So we only respond when you detect something, but sometimes it's too late. So this is why that's, by having the cybersecurity framework, sometimes it can get over-complicated in certain scenario. Like for example, the MITRE attack, and it's have like more than 30, 50, activity and TTP that you need to follow. Right? So this is why that, so with today, the bad guy is getting smarter and smarter, and thanks to the AI technology we have, right? ChatGPT, right? I can just create malware just in the few minutes, right, to create a new variant of the ransomware malware. That simple, I can. All right, so so this is one of the latest headline. I think you guys seen it. MOVEit, zero-day vulnerability, which been attacking all around the world. And those names that you see on the screen, they are not a small company, right? So people are still suffering on that part. So when it comes to digital transformation, right? So yeah, you open up lots of opportunity for the company, right, to extend their services, to extend their business to online world or digital world, right? But at the same time, when you go to cloud, for example, right? So yeah, it's agile, it's fast, right? It can go to market very, very fast in just like couple of days instead of couple of months compared to the previous scenario. But at the same time, you also open up the attack surfaces to the bad guy, right? Because you're giving more, you open up more door that's letting the threat actor to target on you. Not to mention that the complexity in terms of the operation, right? How do you manage when it comes to digitalize, transform your business at the same time? So, so we want to make it simple, right? Even though cybersecurity is deemed to be a very, very complex topic, right? So when it goes, there's only two things we will tell our customer, right? If you want to digitalize your business, right? So if you look at the middle screen, right? Attack protection, which means we want to keep the bad guy out. At the same time, we want to let the good guys in, which is provide the access protection in this part, which is on the right of the screen. Right? In terms of the attack protection, we're looking at the threat protection, proactive defense, real-time monitoring, and also incident response in case that you are suffering some attack. Of course, when you look at access protections, which means we need to have a very detailed identity management, right? Who is the good guy? What can they access? How, where, and when, right? So, so adopting a good cybersecurity platform is one of the strategy I think you can consider, right? So in Sangfor, so we have 4 major platforms that allowing our customer to subscribe to, all right? So like the XDR, right? Extended detection and response, 2.0. Why? I'll tell you why 2.0 later on. Of course, SASE, right? If you, when you have a lot of hybrid working scenario that allowing your employee to work from anywhere, I think SASE is one of the ways that protect your remote worker at the same time. SD-WAN scenario, GTA, Zero Trust Access, which is access protection I mentioned before, right? We only allow user, application, services to access to the right place at the right time. So this is how we provide the access protection. And also at the same time, if you are into software development, that you want to run your services on or application or microservices, right? Container, how do you protect container? So that's why CNAPP come into picture, right? For you to, go to market faster if you want to release something to your customer. Okay? So these are 4 major platforms we have. And so it's not just about a platform. It's not just about the product. But at the same time, I'll take an example of our XDR 2.0, which is powered by our one of our core technology. We call it Secure GPT, right? So based on the cases that we have in the past that we learned from our customer, right, the incident response statistics, the data, we're actually putting every single information into our generative AI model, right? So why is that important? Because we want to learn from the mistake, right? So what are the pattern of this potential new malware coming up, right? Even though it's a new variant. But by having the power of the machine learning and also ability to predict what are the upcoming attack that we're able to foresee in the customer environment. So if you look at today, ChatGPT is widely used today. I mean, people like me, we do a lot of content creation, right? So the more information that I feed to this AI database, then the smarter he will be evolved over the time. So this is how we use it in our similar way in our Secure GPT. Okay, and also some guy mentioned about SOC previously. So skill gap is always the primary reason why a SOC fails. Okay, not to mention that he needs to look at 10,000 alerts or logs every day, right? So how do we do that? So we do it in different way, right? So as you know, generative AI are using natural language, right, to talk to you, chatbot, right? You can just ask him anything. So we take the same context that putting in our XDR platform, which is nowadays the stock analysts are able to ask our AI model, all right? For example, this guy can ask, what is the current security trend in my environment? Rather than just, key in tons of the technical syntax or command, just want to pull out some log from, maybe from firewall, from SIEM, from EDR, right? But nowadays we can just chat to the machine behind the scene, right? And also, if let's say there's an incident happen and there's a suspicious attack, so you can ask the AI, our chat Secure GPT, all right, so what should I do next? Is there any best practice recommendation that I can do? It's more on natural language conversation. Of course, behind the scene, there's a lot of technical language and so machine learning language, which is customer don't need to bother about it, right? So, what are the takeaways that we have today? Governance, risk, and compliance is still important. It will still give us a framework and guideline, right, to respond to incident, right? And also it takes a foundation aspect for the broader security. But those, like what I mentioned, they are passive and they are reactive most of the time. Until you discover something, it might be too late, right? So this is why you need to adopt a more proactive approach, right, to really deal with the problem, which is one example that I've shown is our security platform with our AI capability, which is you can be proactively, to understand your cybersecurity posture, right? What you can do next, rather than just sit there, wait for the incident to happen. So with that, then you are able to get effective detection and also timely response in case of anything goes wrong in your environment. So I think with that is a short sharing. So hopefully you can get some more insight from us. And I would like to go very, very detailed, but I only have 30 minutes. So just give you some ideas of what we're doing and what are the new things that are coming up in the market, and how do we leverage on the generative AI to protect our customer, right? So yeah, I think with that, I'm done.
Please remain on stage because we have received some questions from online audience. So our colleagues is giving you an iPad. Would you please respond to the questions from online, please?
Okay, so so the question from Zoom: where does the secure GPT have the training data stored? Will the model be trained with the company data without needing it to leave the company parameter? All right. So so we deploy the secure GPT in the cloud, which is not part of the customer environment. Okay, so of course the data will be leaving the company parameter. And how do we store it? Of course, in the cloud, one of our own IDC that's in the country. All right, so we have different IDC in different theater that's to comply some of the regulatory compliance, the customer that have concern that data leaving the country. But it's, of course, it's also the customer parameter. Right, anyone?
Any more questions? If no, let's put our hands together to thank Mr. Lim's sharing. Thank you so much, Mr. Lim. And now let's the Q&A with gift section. So please scan the QR code here, displaying on the screen. Enter the WhatsApp chat room and get ready to send your answer to us. The person who answers correctly as the fastest will be the winner. Our colleagues will contest the winner for the gift redemption. Are you ready for the question? The question is, in today's rapidly evolving threat landscape, which strategic shift do you think is the most critical to enhance your cybersecurity framework? A, adopting AI-driven cybersecurity tools. B, transitioning from reactive to proactive strategies. Or C, integrating comprehensive security platform. Please send us the answer right now. Thank you so much. And now we are going to take a short break. There will be parallel meetings in the next section. Defending against cyber attacks, a fast action of incident response strategies and tactics in this room, and the next phase of digital transformation, a multilingual internet in N106. Please stay tuned and feel free to join any of these. Before you leave the venue, please be reminded to take all your belongings and get the gift and certificate redemption voucher at the exit. I'll see you again at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Test. 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next sharing section will begin soon. Would everyone please be seated? Thank you. Welcome back, all our guests. We'll now proceed to the next sharing on defending against cyber attack, a fast action of incident response strategies and tactics. The following presentation will focus on the typical challenges of incident response, including lessons learned with practical examples and recommendations on how to prevent crisis situations. This session will also welcome questions from the audience using the link, the Zoom link Q&A part. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. David Moucher, the Director of FortiGuard Responder Services International. Mr. Moucher, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Before I start with my presentation, I'd like to explain some big things. So let's give them a quick round of applause, please. Thank you. So I'm David. I'm part of a Fortinet Global Incident Response team, and we support customers in the crisis situations. Those might be ransomware, phishing, or many, many other attacks, which I will cover in a second. So what we typically see when we get called into a case, something like this. Who has seen this before? Just raise your hands. Okay, let me ask the question different time. Who has a cousin or a sister or knows somebody who saw something like this? Very good. All right. So today we're gonna start with a helicopter view. I'm gonna share with you some threat information from our FortiGuard team. We have some incident use case, so some demonstration of what our team has supported our customers. I'm going to share with you some trends which we see, and in the end, I'm going to talk about how our team can support you, our customers. And please pay attention. There will be a quiz game in the end with very, very nice prizes, so it's worthy to listen. So you see David on stage, but actually there is an army of people behind me. You don't see them, they are behind my back. This is hundreds of people from the FortiGuard labs, which are creating threat intelligence, which are collecting all the data from our devices worldwide, reverse engineering malware, and doing many, many other things. So this is the team which we work together very closely. One thing which this team is producing is the threat intelligence report, which is released twice per year. It's for free, you can download it, and it's sharing the latest and greatest news of what we see. This is an example of the actual report, which is available online. And I'm gonna share with you some details about ransomware from the report. So in the second part of last year, we saw pretty much something like fragmentation. Who remembers fragmenting your hard disk from very, very old times? So this is similar to what happened last year. There were many groups, and actually they kind of tunneled into only several groups which were accountable for all the ransomware attacks which were happening. Another thing which we saw, which is a trend, is ransomware as a service. So you don't need to be a coder, don't need to be very technically, you don't need to be very technical in order to run this. You can actually rent it. So there is rent a botnet, rent a ransomware as well. And Gunkrab, which is a ransomware family from about 5 years ago, was the most dominant one in this one. So how does it work? The ransomware operators, they run, it's like a company. They have IT departments, they have development, they have HR departments who actually hire new people. They have an offensive team who is collecting vulnerabilities and creating new zero-day attacks. So quite sophisticated teams. And you can rent this. So as I said, you don't need to be technically very capable. Even my mother could go online and rent ransomware in order to launch attacks. What's interesting in this, as you can see, the setup of the ransomware operators, sometimes it's much more mature than from the victims which they are attacking, which is kind of scary. Some ransomware statistic from last year. So last year in the second half, we saw an uptick of about 16%. and this trend goes up. So this year we have also the statistics, which I don't have yet because the report is just being prepared for this year, but the trend is going up. So ransomware is really, really a big issue in the market. Something, and this is coming from our team, what we see. So this is the first initial vectors. This is the, how does the bad guys get access to your networks, to your computers? Mostly they're using stolen credentials, which you can buy on a darknet. Web shells, vulnerabilities. The most prominent was the Exchange one, which kept us busy and kept the customers busy for about 2 years. So this was one of the main source of attacks in the, which we have seen. But of course, phishing, so targeting the human part in the game, phishing attacks, and also exploiting vulnerabilities in RDP, VPN, and other systems. So these are the typical entry points, initial vectors for the bad guys. One of my friends, Mr. Muller, said something very, very interesting about a decade ago, but it's still very, very, very valid today. It's not a matter of if the companies will be hacked. It's just a matter of time, when. And if you get, just be prepared. So have some incident response plans, have simulations in order to be prepared and not just wait for the thing to happen. The incident case which I brought to share with you today, it's a global organization. They had a huge complex network covering pretty much all countries in the world. So my sister team is a managed detection and response team. They operate a 40 EDR tool for our customers. They detected some of the attacks. But unfortunately, in this case, only one region was covered by the EDR. So if you think about it, you have a huge network, but only looking and monitoring one part of this. This was one of the issues which we had there. Our analysts have identified malicious activity using the 40 EDR and informed the customer. The customer has hired our incident response team, and we went into a live threat actor situation. So the threat actor was in a network, was doing something, and we were helping the customer to identify and respond to it. I'm going to share with you some of the challenges which happened in this case. So the summary is, summary spans about 10 months, which is, let's say, a typical time frame for this type of things. So it's not weeks, it's more months which we are looking at. First of all, the threat actor got access to the network using a Citrix vulnerability and started moving into other regions. As I mentioned, our team has identified this, the threat actor movement around the network and informed the customer about it. You can guess what happens. If you get a notification, would you act upon this, or would you just leave it in your mailbox? That's a typical thing which happens. The threat actor started moving laterally through the network using RDP and other standard protocols. So pretty much using tools which administrator use, system tools, which kind of covered them a little bit. They also were using other tools which typically threat actors are using, like Cobalt Strike and others. In this case, the antivirus, the traditional antivirus which was running on a system, failed. So it detected some of this, but it did not detect the backdoors. That's why we always say have something more sophisticated on the systems, like an endpoint detection response. Because you want to catch the bad guys in the kitchen while they are still cooking the meal, before the meal is served, pretty much. You want to see things like dropping password from memory, creating RDP sessions, collecting data, exfiltrating data, and things like this. And a normal traditional antivirus would not catch this. Which I'm not saying that you shouldn't have an antivirus, definitely you should, but have something more sophisticated in order to keep up with the bad guys. So we saw the threat actors continued exfiltrating data, a lot of data. And afterwards, this was one of the issues. The customer started doing remediation without knowing the full extent of the attack. As I mentioned, it was a global network, but only one part of the network was covered with monitoring, with EDR. This is something like, I compare it to human beings, right? We have ears, we have eyes, we have a nose, so we have different sensors. But try to imagine covering all the sensors and using only one, like your nose or your ears, and try to navigate through Hong Kong. I bet this will not be a good game, which was exactly the case here. The customer started remediating without knowing the full extent. Of course, the threat actor started doing something by encrypting the data and doing something bad. So, as a summary, 3 different vectors were used: Cobalt Strike, System BCs, and this type of things. Typical tools for which we see during incidents nowadays. So our team, as mentioned before, advised the customer to first get a full picture of the attack before starting doing something, which is very crucial here. And it took us also a long time to convince the customer that the data has been exfiltrated, to prove them, like, look, your data has left the building already. It was a very complicated issue. So looking at some trends from last year, and this is coming from our incident data, so from our analysis. The top 4 factors, or the top 4 things which are going wrong is not being prepared, not having incident response plans, incident response procedures, doing tabletop exercises in order to simulate different threat scenarios to protect yourself. But also lack of visibility logging tools in the network. And patch management, so having vulnerable systems sitting out in the internet, like Exchange servers and things like this. It will definitely contribute to an attack. So some lessons learned. And typically, or normally we divide them into technology, processes, and people. So the first one is limited visibility into your environment. So make sure that you have the right tools and the right configuration in order to see what's going on. As mentioned before in the incident, having a global network and only looking and covering in one part of this will not win. The people part. Make sure that you have the right people with the right education or the right skill sets running or supporting your environments. That's very important. Mostly people buy a lot of tools, which is great, but we forget about the processes. So how to integrate those tools into your procedures, into your operations. And also the third part, people. Having the right people with the right skills is very, very crucial. Using tool that detects activity. As I mentioned before, the attackers are evolving with new attacks. So we have to do this as well with our protection and detection technologies. So don't trust a traditional antivirus anymore. It will not help. It will not help against the sophisticated attackers and attacks which we are seeing nowadays. So having something like endpoint detection, network detection, sandbox technology and all the things is really, really crucial. And last but not least, the process part. Be prepared. Have an incident response plan. Have incident response procedures. So documented step-by-step guides of who needs to do what. And the best thing to have this upfront. So don't start thinking how we're gonna cope with the situation or what we're gonna do if the house is burning behind you. That's the worst situation, worst time to be prepared. So be prepared is the main message here. Very quickly about our FortiGuard services, so how we support customers in different cases. So we have a global team with many, many skill sets. We have reverse engineering ninjas, we have analysts, we have threat intelligence people, and these are some of the certification which the team is supporting. And as I said, we do incident response, we do MDR, so managed DDR for the customers, and also do preparedness services, so to prepare yourself before something happens. Some of the services are here. They are divided into 3 different areas. This might be important for later on. So we have assess, prepare, and respond. So for the assessment, we have 3 different types, starting very helicopter view with a SOC assessment, looking at different things which belongs to the SOC, threat intelligence, all the processes, shift, and this type of things. Little bit narrowed down is incident response readiness assessment, which looks about your incident response plans, procedures, and this type of things. The third one is very specific one for ransomware. So looking on things which might be important for you when you get a ransomware attack. So these are the 3 types of assessment which we provide. For the improve part, as mentioned before many times, I'm going to mention this many, many times because in my eyes, it's the most important one, having incident response plans and playbooks. So being prepared before something happens in the best case. Running tabletop exercises. Let me ask you who has incident response plans and who is training them with tabletop exercises, dry runs. Okay, there is a few, very good. And last but not least, we have an incident response service. So we support customers when something happens with a 24/7 global hotline and an SLA of 1 hour. So these are the services. I'm going to talk about one new service which we just introduced, which is threat hunting or compromise assessment or pre-breach assessment. There is many names for this. What it is about is if the customer calls me and says, David, you know, I don't know if I have an incident. There is no proof yet. We didn't see anything, any data has been exfiltrated, or we don't see anything, we don't have a proof. But you know, the admin of the Exchange server found something strange on the log files, or there is a machine waking up at night and sending data to a strange country. Can you please help us, first of all, identifying, do we have an incident? Or is it just a broken configuration in the firewall or broken switch which is doing these crazy things? Also, we help the customers understanding the depth and the breadth of the attack and the impact of this. And we help them, of course, remediating if we find that there is an incident going on. So for this, we are leveraging, of course, Fortinet technology. So as I mentioned before, FortiEDR is an endpoint tool. If we are talking about network, FortiNDR, FortiRecon, FortiDeceptor, which is a honeypot technology in order to uncover or to get the bad guys in the kitchen while they are still cooking something, FortiSandbox and others. Keep this in mind, this might be valuable at the end of the presentation. And of course, we are using open source tools like Velociraptor and other commercial tools available. So how does it work? There is different phases. The first phase is the requirements validation. So what we are dealing with. I'm always saying 1 million ways to die. There is also 1 million ways to have a cyber attack. So we need to first analyze, what are we dealing with? Is it endpoint? Is it a network? Is it something in the OT area? After this, we deploy the tools depending on a case. We can deploy tools on the endpoints, on the networks, in the cloud, wherever this is needed. And this is being done dynamically based on the attack or the scenario. Collecting data and evidence on the endpoints, in the cloud, it's very, very crucial. Analyzing the data. So what we just found, we need to analyze. So we use threat intelligence from the FortiGuard team. We use machine learning and other technologies in order to do the analysis. Once this is done and we find then that there is an incident ongoing, of course we do the forensic analysis. We look at the memory, We look at the file systems and many, many other points. And last but not least, creating a final report with the findings. So as a last slide, should you have an issue, the easiest way to get in touch with us is going on a Fortinet.com page, and on the upper right corner you have a button, Experience the Breach. There you just need to type in your name or your contact details and roughly what is the situation you are dealing with. And within 1 hour maximum, typically after 10 minutes, one of the lead analysts will come back to you and start a scoping call and start the investigation for you. So coming to the last part.
Thank you, Mr. Matcher. But before we go into the quiz game, we have received one question from our online participants. So would you please check the iPads and then please read out the question and answer the question maybe from our online audience. Thank you.
The first question is, any tips on efficiently streamlining the intelligence from the wild to steer company-specific playbooks and response automation? I would say, yes, this is an important part of this, but typically the playbooks, the procedures are very custom. So if I would write a playbook for you, for example, it would not necessarily fit for some others. So that's why we use it and create custom procedures, and of course using the threat intelligence which is available. So, okay.
So we still have this question 2?
The second question is, how does FortiGuard cover supply chain and third-party breaches? Very interesting question, but this would raise the time a little bit too much. So I would ask the sender of the question to contact us offline and then talk about it.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Matcher. Would you please remain on stage? I remember there's a slide that is the quiz game. We can't miss it. This time a little bit different. If you know the answer, please raise your hands. We'll see who is the fastest, and then our colleagues will pass you the mic to answer that. If you can answer correctly, wow, Mr. Matcher has prepared a gift for you. For question number 1, you have this camping lights. If you want it, please pay attention to the following question. So the first question is...
The first question is, what are the 3 major steps of FortiGuard advisory services? Is it A, assess, improve, and respond? Is it B, identify, assess, improve? Or is it C, prepare, prevent, and protect?
Oh, here you go. You are the first one. So mic, please.
I think it's B.
One more chance for you. 50-50 now. So the correct answer is?
The question again, is it A, assess, improve, and respond? You answer A. Perfect.
A. Yay! Congratulations! Our helper now pass you the gift. Congratulations! So you still have chance. We still have the second question. Wow, this time you have the webcam as the prize of the second question. Are you ready? Let's go!
So the second question is, which technologies are leveraged when we do the services for our customers? Is it A, FortiGate, FortiMail, FortiWeb, FortiClient? Or B, FortiRecon, FortiEDR, Deceptor, and Sandbox? Or is it C, FortiAnalyzer, SIEM, and so on?
I see many hands this time. Shall we count to 3? So you are the judge. Okay, see who's the fastest. Okay, on my count of 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, here you go. So the correct answer is?
B, the FortiRecon, FortiEDR, FortiDeceptor, and FortiSandbox. Thank you for your hint before.
Thank you very much.
Wow, perfect. Congratulations. The webcam is yours now. Let's give another big round of applause to thank Mr. David Matcher for your nice sharing. Thank you. Thank you. And next, we're going to discuss why care about dangling domain hijacking and how to prevent the threats. This session, we also welcome questions from our audience. May I now invite Mr. Alvin Kwang, Head of Corporate Development and Strategic Alliances, APAC CSC, to share with us the topic of dangling domain hijacking. Welcome, Mr. Alvin Kwang.
Hi, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is N101. I'm the head of strategic partnership and products in CSC. So, what I'm going to talk about today is questions about a particular kind of DNS. Before I do so, I want to talk to you about something I find rather important because you are attending APAC DNS. So, what's DNS has to do with cybersecurity? What's ICANN to do with cybersecurity? That's a question that we have to answer. So before we understand the landscape about the internet, we can't understand some of the attack that we find from the internet. So, what I'm going to do today is to talk about the internet and cybersecurity. I'm going to talk about how subdomain hijacking, or dangling DNS hijacking actually happens, how to mitigate that, and some of the highlight from, actually not from our report only, but from a report from Tsinghua University. So today I'm supposed to have a guest speaker from Tsinghua University, but unfortunately they are not able to come, but they pass on the information to me to present on their behalf. So let me give the credit to the Tsinghua University research team first. So to begin, we actually live under two systems at the moment. One, which I would call the network security system, where we are basically trying to prevent things from hijacking or penetrating into our network, our firewall, basically. So traditionally, we understand cybersecurity mainly from a network security perspective. Now, the other system is the inter-network system. So this is where ICANN lives. ICANN is dealing with inter-network, how systems connect to different systems. And increasingly in the cloud environment and modern security environment, we are going to see a lot more of these two merging together. So this is why I think we have to understand first, why are we going to talk about cybersecurity as together in a ICANN APAC DNS forum. So in a nutshell, network security, you're probably familiar with this term called zero trust. The primary concern on network side is about intrusion prevention. We are familiar with the model called OSI model. The stuff that we have to buy are over there. And the inter-network side are quite different. It doesn't use OSI model. It uses a model called TCP/IP model. It's a totally different concept. TCP/IP doesn't even like layering at all. They don't like layering. Most of the things doesn't work in layer. The primary concern is something called identity abuse. If you join the session from John Crane from ICANN, we talk about domain name as a digital identifier. So a lot of the problem that happens on the internet is actually an identity abuse problem. So the list of stuff that happens on the internet are like domain hijacking, Kaminsky attack, DNS hack, stuff like that. All right, I won't bore you with it, but I think it's important for us to first establish these two frameworks because that's very important for our subsequent conversation. Now, this community, this event is for us to bring together the internet community and the cybersecurity community, which doesn't always work well together or mingle really closely together. At least I don't see a lot of cybersecurity experts going to ICANN meeting and vice versa, right? So what we need to do is to understand how the two actually interlink together. So let me give you a couple of examples. So as a cybersecurity expert, do you want to know who is behind a cyber attack? All right, if I detect something, a malicious IP or malicious domain name, do we want to know who they are? probably think the answer would be, yeah, we definitely want to know who they are. Do you want a faster takedown of phishing site? Do you want the ability to block harmful domain name from even registered? Are you affected by the upcoming shortening of SSL to 90 days instead of 1 year? It's coming probably around September this year or next year. So these are things that is happening on the internet side, in the internet community. We are making policy related to this. So in terms of knowing who is behind the cyber attack, that has a lot to do with ICANN, who is reform, which define who get access to certain who is information. It also related to ICANN, who is accuracy policy, which define, if you disclose that who is ownership data, is it going to be a fake data that is basically useless for you? Phishing site takedown, I had a session yesterday talking about a particular concept called DNS abuse. In the industry, among the government policymaker, we all talk about phishing attack takedown using the term DNS abuse. The other thing is like, blocking harmful content from being registered. That's a concept under ICANN right protection mechanism policy. And there are commercially available mechanism for you to actually purchase something as long as you submit your trademark into the trademark clearinghouse, which is an ICANN mechanism, and then you can buy a block to block your brand from being registered by different registries. So I won't go through a lot of these in details, but I hope that this kind of establish, why internet policy is relevant for cybersecurity. Now, what's connect the networks, the inter-network side? There are a couple of things like domain name, IP address, DNS, BGP protocol. Encryption is quite important to protect the data itself. The topic of today's discussion is something called subdomain hijacking or dangling domain hijacking, which is something, in between domain name and DNS, somewhere over there. So what subdomain or dangling DNS hijacking is? Now I'm going to play you a video. That's a video actually not done by CSC. I deliberately don't want to use ours. I will show ours later on, but this is a pretty good case actually by Checkpoint. And the reason, and one of the things that is also related to ICANN is that because of this issue, ICANN actually issue a warning to the registrar community. This is the email that we received as a registrar. And ICANN is basically warning us, as registrar, we have to pay attention to this because, this has a pretty big impact on everyone's security stance. In that particular email, this is where I find the Tsinghua University research team, and I make a contact with them and invite them to present together with me. Unfortunately, they are not able to come, but you'll get the content and you'll get the research today. Now, the Checkpoint video, this is on YouTube, so it's public. I didn't steal it from them. So this basically explains how dangling DNS happens in real life by a company. So let me just play that. Now that's basically show a link being distributed via WhatsApp. And you can see that the link is ea.com and a subdomain. That's basically show that when they click on the link, the hijacker obtain the email and password and stole the account. Now, let me stop from here. Something that is very important for you to see is that phishing email used the exact domain name, ea.com, a subdomain of ea.com. So how do they actually do that? How can they actually hijack the real domain of a reputable company and send a phishing email using the real domain name? Now, let me tell you, if they are sending a phishing link like that, if I am a consumer, I will click on it because I can see ea.com. There's no way for me to distrust that link. And this is very important. This is the real threat of dangling DNS hijacking. Now, the video I just showed basically showcased a particular case how in real life, how dangling DNS hijacking actually happens, and you see the threat. Now, this video that I'm going to play is how it actually works, how to launch the attack, so to speak. So after that, I'll share a little bit of a research on how big this problem is.
Global businesses rely on the internet for everything, from emails, websites, authentication, and voice over IP. Throughout the year, businesses launch promotional websites, announcements, and applications. Before users can reach the destination website to access content, there's a process that must be followed. The website owner will engage with a web hosting provider to request a landing page for an upcoming promotion. Next, they will reach out to their DNS administrator or IT team to make that connection. Behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. In order for the site to display live content, they need to connect the dots, which is the DNS. When the campaign is over, the marketing team will realize that the website is no longer needed and will remove it by going to the website. The marketing team doesn't realize that they need to also go back to their DNS team to remove the DNS record. The DNS record that is used to map users to the destination is left behind, as dangling DNS. Over time, these DNS records will accumulate and can be used against victims in an attack known as subdomain hijacking. Cyber criminals crawl the web asking where does this point to. They can go to the web hosting provider and ask for a specific host name as long as it's not in use, no questions asked. Cyber criminals will use dangling DNS records to display their own malicious content. They can easily set up their spoof website and attract genuine traffic for their fake content using a hostname no longer in use. Security protocols that detect bad actors and their activities are circumvented by this method. Security teams can't detect a breach, and end users can't tell the difference. Cyber criminals can even get a free domain-validated digital certificate to add the HTTPS padlock to seem more authentic. With time and business growth, more of these dangling DNS will accumulate, and teams will hesitate to delete DNS records they're unfamiliar with. It's a challenge for enterprise organizations to manage assets outside the firewall, where there are a variety of complex external attack surfaces. CSE has developed a subdomain monitoring solution that provides comprehensive analysis and daily alerts to any change in state, allowing you to quickly take action and remove the offending dangling DNS record. Receive full reporting of all your DNS zone records daily, and finally, get exposure to the vulnerability that is very difficult to manage across departments. Secure your organization's continuity, reputation, and revenue with CSC subdomain monitoring.
All right, thank you. Hope that video already explained how it works. Basically, when you forgot to clean your DNS record, it becomes a dangling DNS, and all I need to do as a hacker is to find that there is a dangling DNS, and then I go to the provider that you used before, a cloud provider, a CDN provider, or whatnot. I buy a service, and then I say, all right, I point this service back to this subdomain. The two points will connect again, and they have control. So that's how the previous case happened. That's how they are able to launch a phishing attack using the real domain name. Now, the question that you probably would ask is, all right, I understand this. This is quite threatening in a way because it is using my brand. My domain name is, abusing the trust, identity abuse. But how big is this problem? If it's just really remote, the hacker community doesn't really know about this. That's not probably a big problem. So this is the just search for this answer. Let's refer to the Tsinghua University research led by Dr. Zhang Mingming. Very good research. So they did a very thorough research on this particular issue. And so to start off with, if you see any Tsinghua logo over there, that's basically their slide. and you know the content are from them. I have to change the colorings so that it seems more congruent. Now, there are cases like this, a lot of subdomain being taken over from a reputable company. There are the EAKs and things like that. It's rising as reported in the news. Now, and there is this particular trend. This is a research done by their team. So they compare the subdomain takeover incidents from 2000 and 2021. It's actually increased by 25%, and you can see a really alarming trend. It is probably going to continue in that direction as well, because a lot more people are having this particular problem. The DNS hosting environment become a lot more complicated. It's easier for people to forget about it. Now, this is also happening in real life. So this is a print screen from a site called HackerOne. So they do ethical hacking and stuff like that. And if you basically just type subdomain hijacking onto the search function, and you'll see lots of cases of subdomain takeover happen. And when you see this word, it basically means the problem that I just told you about. That exactly what happened to this company. And you'll see Shopify. I probably won't say the name out, but a lot of reputable companies are subjected to this particular attack. So who are actually? So why is it a bigger problem now? Why haven't I heard a lot about this particular problem before? So the answer is this. So this is a research from the Tsinghua team as well. So when they look into their web hosting statistic, they find something really interesting. The number of domain name and website registration is over here. And you can see there's a sudden boost in the number of hosting services available and being purchased by people. So if they are hosting and there are much less website and domain name, what's happening to those hosting? It's being used before, maybe from marketing campaign, and then it's got released. The whole trend of going onto the CDN or the cloud contributed to this particular problem, and this is an exponential and disproportionately it's grown exponentially and disproportionately between the website and domain name and hosting. So this is the real problem. So what the Tsinghua team done is that, all right, if I see this, what's actually behind this? So they narrowed down their vision and research into host-based domain takeover issues, and this is their research. And by hosting-based domain takeover, this is the definition. Basically, a type of domain hijacking attacks by exploiting the authentication vulnerability of public hosting services. Now, this is basically a very technical way to describe dangling domain takeover. Now, so the next question that we have to ask and investigate is, so how many hosts, CDN, cloud, website builders, etc., are actually vulnerable to this kind of dangling domains attack? All right. So now this is the methodology. I promised to showcase this, and I said that there's no way for me to explain the methodology. So, in some other chances, I will invite them to share the methodology to you again, but I'll quickly jump over. Basically, they're using some passive DNS data to conduct the research to find whether there's a problem. I won't go through this particular style of their methodology. Now, the findings, though, is what is important. The finding is that the current practice of hosting service is a mess, basically. And they identified that there are 65 services vulnerable to domain takeover, including a lot of the well-known brands that you might be using at the moment. And you can see the distribution of vendor endpoint patterns and number of services under these different categories that are vulnerable to this particular attack type. I would say some really interesting stats: cloud storage, 7 over 700% basically are vulnerable. CDN is less, but you can see that actually the CDN that is not vulnerable are smaller scale CDN as well for some reason. And they also did a research on the methods where a domain name are pointing to a cloud service. And they identified 9 different methods where a domain name can point to a cloud hosting service. And 7 out of the 9 of the method that you connect the hosting and the DNS is actually vulnerable to this particular attack type as well. So there are 4 different threat models to bypass what they call a DOV, a domain ownership verification. So what that is basically this. So when I buy a hosting service from whatever provider, I can basically say this hosting service should be pointing to whatever domain name, right? So what prevents them from pointing to a domain name that is not owned by them? There must be some kind of domain verification done in order to verify on the other end, I actually have control over that domain name. So that's what they refers to domain ownership verification. So there are 4 different threat models that they can bypass different types of domain name verification, and I asked them to detail that to me, which I find quite interesting because in my definition, there's basically no verification. So let me give you an example. V1, bypassing CNAME validation. So basically what that means is that if I have a buy a hosting service, some provider would say that you have to add a CNAME record in your domain name, and we'll do a CNAME verification to see if you actually own the domain name. Now, but if you just put the whatever fixed CNAME over there, it will basically just pass the service. You don't actually have to input the random CNAME domain record that they provide to you. So basically, they give you some kind of verification, but that verification is kind of doesn't work. You can bypass it really easily by just putting whatever. Now, the V2 are basically the same, but using text record. V3 is basically using IP validation. What that actually means is that if I buy a hosting service, I would have some kind of IP range that identify the cloud hosting environment that I'm under. So they would check whether on the DNS level, whether they are pointing to, on the domain name level, they would, on the A record, for example, they would be pointing to a particular set of IP address. And in a cloud hosting environment, they would have different segments of IP address. They would check whether the A record is pointing to the corresponding IP range used within the cloud segment that you purchase. So that's really easily bypassed because you can just basically check the A record and then buy the hosting service using that particular IP range, and then you bypass the checking. Now, the same can be done on the NS side. Now, these are the 4 methods. I would say none of them are really real verification in that sense. And this is a very important slide, I would say. So top 20 vendors that have 70% of market share are all vulnerable to subdomain hijacking or dangling DNS hijacking. And you can see from their research who are subject to the V1, V2, V3, V4 vulnerability. All right, so that's the thing. That's the research from the Tsinghua team. And the conclusion is that host-based domain takeover threats are very important. It's really basically no control at the moment. And this is why I think in my topic, my topic is why do you have to worry about dangling DNS? Because this is the landscape. This is the research. This is something that is happening in real life every day. And there's an increasing trend, and there's no control at the moment. There's no verification. Now, so the research from the Tsinghua team is actually corresponding quite well with our own research in CSC. So we have a research done within our data set, which is mainly large corporate customer who are using our DNS. And you can see that we have scanned like 6 million records, where the Tsinghua team scanned 600 billion passive DNS. Now, but ours is basically just like real DNS record used by large corporates. So it's different set of records, but the findings are quite similar. You know, in our finding, 21% of the corporate domain names are hijackable. 63% of the record basically show a 404 or 502 bad gateway. Basically represent that the other side, we're pointing our DNS to somewhere, and the other side doesn't work. So if I'm a hacker, I can basically buy a service over there and reconnect back to the DNS record, and basically that's a dangling DNS hijacking. And 38% show some kind of internal server error, which is another set of problem because it's pointing to somewhere internal apparently, and it's not cleaned up. You don't know where it's pointing to. Bad practice. And the other highlight I want to show you is that in the Tsinghua research, they find that there are 270 new vulnerable domain names emerge every single week. So this is a problem as well. It's increasing every week, and that's something that we all have to be aware of. So what happens if the issue is not addressed? I think the video that I showed you before highlighted quite well. The domain name can be used for phishing attacks, and if they phish your customer, I can guarantee you 100% of them would be quite unaware because they're using your domain name. But there's also malware problem, data theft, credentials, stolen credential, financial losses. These are things that could happen if you don't address it. And I have to go back into this topic again. When we are in the DNS forum, we talk about domain name as your identity, your online identity. It defines who you are, and you have to be aware that you have to protect your identity. That's one of the most important things when it comes to the internet network security. Protect your identity. And dangling DNS or your domain name security or your authoritative DNS security are paramount. It's extremely important to protect your brand and your cybersecurity. So this is the thing. We have to be aware of this, and it's have a lot of impact, and it's your real domain. So don't discount this threat. Now, the next question that we have to investigate is then, how do I actually mitigate subdomain hijacking? So this is a concept that I want to quickly bring out. It doesn't really address the issue directly, but I think it's an important concept. The Singapore government actually released a new cybersecurity policy a couple of months ago, I think maybe even a year ago already. Basically, they highlight that corporation needs to do more in cleaning up what they call the internet hygiene. And by internet hygiene, they're looking at like HTTPS, DNSSEC, hijacking, including domain name and subdomain hijacking, I would say, whether you have DMARC record implemented to govern your email protocol. Now, stuff like that are what I call internet hygiene. And I think the Singaporean government is doing a really good job in terms of, proposing this concept of internet hygiene. And I don't see that being, discussed too much in Hong Kong at the moment. So the first thing is that let's talk about hygiene, like review and remove your unwanted legacy records. That's the baseline that you have to do. The next is that you have to daily monitor your DNS record, keep on top of it, don't forget about it, don't know what this particular record pointing to. And the third one would be to implement some kind of monitoring, because look, we are going to forget something. We have too many people changing our DNS. We have different offices around the world with different teams that may add or request an add or removal of DNS records. So it's complicated. So we have to have some kind of baseline safety net to actually monitor if a problem happens. So the monitoring, is something that, because we actually receive a lot of concern from our customer base. That's why we develop a subdomain monitoring service to help customer monitor how it works. Now, I would say that, I'm not saying that you have to buy this service or monitor this service, absolutely, because if you have a really small zone, for example, if your company only have 10 records, all you need to do is to keep it clean. But so you don't have to worry about this if you have a small DNS record that you can self-manage, or you have an excellent internal communication between IP operation, marketing, and sales, or you have a really good control over global operation. No one is going to change anything. Or your people just happens to comply with any internal protocol. I think this is the thing. Internet hygiene is a key word. Are you able to keep really good hygiene? If yes, good. If no, if there are risks in us not able to keep hygiene, then monitoring services like this, like subdomain monitoring or domain monitoring on new registration, are things that help you to build some kind of safety net to keep clean. At least you are aware a potential problem. So basically, this is my presentation. Hopefully, that gives you some food for thought in thinking about your internet hygiene, your DNS record, your subdomain hijacking threats. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alvin Kwan. Please be seated. Thank you. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to have the panel discussion on sensitive data security. Please remain seated and let us wait for a bit like 3 minutes. Please stay tuned and I'll see you all again in 3 minutes. Thank you. Dear guests, here comes the panel discussion on sensitive data security. In the digital economy, the security of sensitive data is a key issue for businesses. Without proper protection, data can become a vulnerable point for corporate security. So how to develop a strong cybersecurity policy is something that every leader needs to master. This section, we also welcome questions from the audience and encourage interaction. Please feel free to sign into Zoom and type your question into the Q&A part. May I now invite our moderator for this section, Mr. Raymond Lam. Mr. Lam is Senior Superintendent of Police, the Deputy Head of Cybersecurity and Technology Crime Bureau of Hong Kong Police Force, and is responsible for cyber policing policy matters and law enforcement of cybersecurity and cybercrime in Hong Kong. Welcome, Mr. Raymond Lam. And then let us welcome our panelists, Mr. KT Gan, partner of PwC. Welcome, KT. And then may I invite Mr. Kev Hao, Head of Security Engineering, Hong Kong and Taiwan, Checkpoint Software Technologies. Mr. Harry Poon, General Manager, Information Security of SmartTone Mobile Communications Limited. Harry, please. And last but not least, we have Mr. Fuller Yu, CISO of Hospital Authority. Mr. Yu, please. Welcome all our guests. Please be seated. Thank you. And now I will hand the floor to the moderator for this section, Mr. Raymond Lam, please.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this panel discussion. This topic concerns every one of us and is more on about sensitive data security in the digital economy. I'm Raymond Lam, honored to be your moderator today. I welcome you all today's discussion. Our focus today revolves around a topic of utmost significance in our digital age, the imperative needs for robust data security measures. Throughout our deliberations, we'll explore the multi-phased aspects of data security, examining the challenges faced by individuals, organizations, and enterprise, and public sector. Our esteemed panelists will share their expertise, insights, and good practices to help us to navigate in this complex terrain. Now, with the stage here, we start with Keith from Checkpoint. Hi, Keith. We understand your company is armed with keen insights into the latest cyber perils globally. And could you kindly share with us some statistics or figures that shed light on the magnitude of global threat landscape in relation to the sensitive data leakage?
Okay, thanks, Raymond. I believe everyone, if you care about cybersecurity, somehow you will look at the web, you saw some statistics from different parties, from vendors, from third-party researchers. But one key thing I want to emphasize is that if you look at the stat, like you will know that like over 90% of attack start from phishing. It's very important or very like a challenging issue today we have to handle. Like, and more important is if you look about the phishing attack today, more than 80% is actually encrypted. So it's become more difficult to us, like as a cybersecurity solution provider, to inspect the content inside because the data is encrypted. And also like phishing is not just email, although majority is still email, but we do see a lot of phishing start targeting instant messenger, like SMS, WeChat, WhatsApp, even though we see some phishing attack using Teams, Microsoft Teams, for example, to deliver the phishing attack. Another, of course, the ransomware attack is also a very challenging discussions. Although you can see, also from our research, we do see ransomware attack is kind of dropping in terms of the number of incidents. But the impact of the ransomware is actually growing rapidly. The impact in regard of money, every single ransomware incident, talking about like millions of dollars, and then we see that the impact is getting higher and higher. And another like security problem is about software vulnerabilities. We do have some statistic talking about in 2020, talking about open source community. There's about 10,000 new software vulnerabilities identified from the community. And one interesting thing is if you like heard about Log4j as one of the like critical vulnerabilities that happened like at Christmas time 2 years ago. And as of today, we see the stat is still 30% of people, a developer, is downloading the vulnerable Log4j component. Imagine this vulnerable Log4j component is inside your application, which is in production. What happened? But still, 30% of people downloading the vulnerable versions. And again, and also the attack for API key exposure. We are talking about a lot of, when we talk about digital economy or data economy, one key thing is data. How we can leveraging data to create value, how we can exchange data with our business partner, or talk about within the organizations. When we open API to third party to access our application or access the data, like what happened if someone get your API key? But it's just, in fact, it's happening. If you look at the news like a few months back, Toyota, one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world, they got an issue because the API key is actually uploaded to GitHub with their source code, and the bad guy get the source code and identify the API key there, and then use the API key to access the customer data. Talk about over 2 million of their customers is actually impacted, right? So I think the cybersecurity problem is we see a lot of problem today from different like angle, like talking about phishing, ransomware, API key, and also human error, right? A lot of mistakes start from human, like the Toyota case. If the developer upload the source code before the source code, they understand there's an API key. If they have like a procedure to remove the API key or encrypt the API key, the thing doesn't happen.
That's right, Keith. We also see this every day, sadly. Seems that we are facing more data security risk than ever. So talk about the data protection measures and practices, and I think it's clear that most affected enterprise they have implemented some form of data security measures, but not none. But Kev, could you just enlighten us any key technological solution and good practice that organization can use to enhance that?
I think one of the key works of is zero trust. To me, like zero trust is kind of a whitelist approach. So we don't believe anything, as long as we know this is okay to allow. This is the idea of zero trust. But zero trust is not a product. So you cannot buy a product to source this, to handle all the zero trust requirement. It's kind of like a procedure and like an architecture standpoint. You build an architecture based on zero trust approach. Think about the email. Someone sent you an email. Do you trust the guy? This is zero trust, right? Think about, again, developer app. Do you trust the app is secure? This is also zero trust. So that's why we need to different kind of security measurement to help us using tools to help us to identify if this like email coming from a trusted party or this attachment inside the email is not malicious. But a lot of company we come across when they start implement zero trust, their first aim is to zero trust 100%. It's not like realistic, and a lot of time it fails when they start. Because when they start the zero trust approach, they think to define a very granular security enforcement to make sure everything is being inspected or being blocked. But when they implement the zero trust at the beginning, they find that a lot of they receive a lot of complaint from the user, complaint from the system team. The app doesn't work, the system doesn't communicate because the policy they define is very restricted. The question is, when you define a security policy, you need to understand what you need to allow, but who tell you what do you need to allow? So you need to communicate with different teams, like with your app team, to understand how to develop the app, what kind of, what port they need to open to allow the app communicate. But most of the time, for example, I was in Taiwan 2 weeks ago, meeting a customer, a very large OEM, manufacturer in Taiwan. They are trying to doing so-called micro-segmentation in the network. They want to segmenting the network and putting security measurement. But when they start, they facing challenges when they talk to developer. Even the developer doesn't know what kind of a port they need to open for the application running. So that's why when you start implement zero trust, don't do it at the day one. You want to aim 100% of zero trust. Start from start it gradually, 30%. If compare 30% to zero is much better than right. And you just increasing gradually from 30%, 50%, 70%, and then eventually you have 90%, 100% of zero trust. So, but again, zero trust is not just a product; it's a architecture. It's involved a lot of different types of technology: access control, email security, threat prevention. You can name it. A lot of technology. That part of the zero trust idea.
I see. Great thanks, Kay, for your professional advice for the corporate. But as we know, mobile devices and the connections play another significant roles in the digital economy. And with the high mobile usage and penetration rate in Hong Kong, I think this device store and access a wealth of sensitive information. And Harry, what about from an individual user's perspective? Could you have your view? Can we have your view on why the mobile phone and its data security is crucial?
Okay, so thank you, Raymond. Based on the report, today, I think more than 90% of the active internet users are accessing the internet using the mobile device. So in Hong Kong, there are more than 18 million of registered SIM cards, but we only have around 7.6 million people. So on average, each person owns more than 2 registered SIM cards. Not many one of you may realize the phone in your pocket actually may know more about yourself than yourself. So from, let's say, how fast you walk, to all the websites you have visited during the last 6 months, to all the keyword you use to search the internet, or all the location you have been to, or even the food you ordered yesterday, or the food you have taken, and etc. Not only there are many people are using the mobile device to do online banking, but also we use it as a second factor authenticator like SMS one-time password, or use it as a soft token app to authorize the banking transactions or credit card purchases. So at the end of the day, the mobile device have access to the same amount of information, if not more, when compared to the traditional endpoint layer computer. So that's why mobile device security is so important.
It sounds alarming, Harry. And when we go deeper to explore how the attack works against the mobile devices, in recent months, we have seen a rise in the phishing SMS messages, prompting the police of the Hong Kong MA and telecommunication carriers to take actions, like the fraudulent calls and URL blocking, as well as the forthcoming SMS sender ID authentication mechanism. So, Harry, you have done so much cybersecurity program and risk management in telecommunication sector. So what do you see about the attack surfaces of mobile device and the challenges do the mobile phone users face in terms of the data security?
I think in the mobile device, there are many attack surfaces. Let's say from Bluetooth to Wi-Fi, from SMS to email, from scam calls to malicious web links, from mobile OS to mobile apps, and etc. And that is one of the reasons hackers like to target mobile devices. And as a matter of fact, many cyber attack begins at the endpoint device, and on top, working remotely introduce new cybersecurity risks. As mobile device has so much sensitive information, but security is often overlooked, in my opinion. That is one of the reasons many malicious actors like to target mobile device. Mobile security awareness indeed is one of the challenges, in my opinion.
I see, great, Harry. And I think everyone appreciates your insight, and failing to protect the sensitive data in your mobile phone would definitely have a significant cost. That's why we need an endpoint product. Apart from the commercial sector and individual user levels, and the public service is definitely essential, while healthcare sector is core one. So in last month, there was even a hospital in United States that the provider publicly linked a hack incident to its closure. All data were locked up without recovery. And hey, Harry, I hope it will not happen in Hong Kong. But you are an experienced cyber security professional in this area. So could you share with us your concern in this area?
Thank you, Raymond. So I think, first of all, healthcare is in fact a critical infrastructure among the financial systems, the power grids, and also the transportation system. So, however, if you go into the dark market, you will find that the credit card value is about 10 USD, while the healthcare record can be up to 100, even 200 USD. I think the reason is quite simple. So if the banks lost your data, they lost your credit card information, they can issue a new credit card. But if a hospital lost your medical data, they cannot replace your medical data on that. So I think this is really a huge challenge on that. And if you look at that, healthcare sector is always a low-hanging fruit from the eyes of the hackers. I think the reason is because the controls and also the investment of the cybersecurity in the health sector is much lower than other sectors, such as the financial industry. If you look at a recent report from IBM, there's a report called The Cost of Data Breach. In fact, healthcare sector is always is among the top for the 12 consecutive years. So on the average, each data breach, the cost to the organization is up to 10 million USD per cases. And then if you look at that, I think the reason is very to understand that it's because it's really a low-hanging fruit on that. So that this is really how the health sector is really concerned about this. And Raymond, you asked about the challenge. I think I would see from the three areas, the people, process, and technologies. On the people side, I think traditionally the healthcare workers, they're focusing on serving the patient. However, they not necessarily have those good cybersecurity awareness. And also, we are also lack of the cyber talents to secure the healthcare system. On the process side, because of the demands, we actually need to serving our patients and through the connection, and they need to access the critical healthcare information anytime, anywhere. And it will create an increasing attack surface to those health records. And also, if you look at the technology perspective, healthcare systems become a mission critical, so it's really become a very actually subject of the cyber attacks, in particular on the ransomware. Because in the healthcare sectors, the ransomware attack is getting easier, and also health sector is also getting more likely to pay the ransom. And also from the technology perspective, we have lots of legacy systems that need to be protected without those good control. And also, we also need to managing the emerging new technologies such as the 5G, AI, and big data. So this is really a challenging on the people, technology, and also process side to secure the healthcare system as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Stuart. You have mentioned a few areas, and we will further our discussion later. But before that, I would like to discuss further into the digitalization, or we call the transformation in the public sector. And particularly, HA is now using kind of mobile applications similar to the governments. We are now launch over 100 mobile apps to Hong Kong residents. Protecting the sensitive public data would be even more critical tasks. What are the key areas you may advise us, and any references we can take?
Yes, I think several areas we need to focus on. First of all is from the governance perspective. So I think it's important to really have the leadership from the top of the house to set the tone, and also to create the cultures in terms of the cyber awareness amongst all the people, all the staff in the healthcare organizations. And secondly, you have a good process, which is a repeatable process from the data collection to the data usage to the data management, to make sure everyone has a clear roles and responsibilities to understand how and when the data should be protected at what level, and also use the risk-based approach. And also need to really focusing on the crown jewels, so make sure you understand where your critical data are, who are accessing that, and can you have a good backup even at the ransom attack situation. And finally, I think it's also equally important is about the technology side, so that apply the right technologies. I think our panels discuss about the zero trust model implementation. We talk about the identity management and also the access controls and also the encryptions. And don't forget about for the key management for those as we have the similar situation that the keys exposure to the public. And I think it's very important to combine everything together and make it as a ongoing process, because you cannot achieve the top level at the one night. So you need to really have a continuous process to evaluate yourselves, do the benchmarking, and improve your security postures. And I think the key elements is really about the cybersecurity resilience, because we are really talking about keep the lights on 24/7, serving our patient. So cybersecurity is really not just an IT issue; it's really a risk item link up to the patient safety and also the operation as well. Thank you.
Oh, great! Thanks to your wonderful sharing with our audience. Further reminds us the importance of strong security concept as well as the measures. And now I would like to shift our attention back to the main theme of the forum, the domain name system. We recognize the vital role DNS plays in a fundamental element of the internet. As a distinguished cybersecurity expert, Katie will want to hear from you any notable security issues that DNS is facing now.
So obviously I think internet is very important for us. I think everyone here would probably cannot live without internet for, I think, even 5 minutes, right? Wherever you travel, you instantly try to get yourself hooked up. There's so many things you want to transact over there. So my view is that, again, I think just now borrowing what Kev just mentioned, number one of the attack is phishing. And if anyone here thinking about that, how would people phish you? They phish you because they register a domain and then they start phishing you. And there are so many millions of domains out there, it's being tagged as phishing. Have we asked ourselves one question? How come and why so easy they can register a domain? And that could be one of the causes. Because it's easily accessible, the cost of executing of that is so easy. Why wouldn't I attack using that method? The cost of robbing a bank is much more higher if you think about it. And moreover, if you look at some of the statistics that we're living today, let me give you 2 data points, okay? Microsoft bought over OpenAI for $10 billion. We all saw that from the newspaper. At the same time, UBS bought over Credit Suisse for $3 billion. And AI costs 3 times more than a global bank. What does that tell us? That's the future. The future is cyberspace. And I'm not sure how many of you working in the banking sector. Easily in the banking sector, you'll be audited 20 times a year. Easily. You call it whichever domain. And you can even ask yourself a question if you're in the banking sector. How many regulations are there for a banking sector? First line of defense, second line of defense, third lines of defense. And my question is that, why are we not regulating some of this? Where millions of hackers out there abusing the domain that causes issues today. So I would recommend go back to the basic. Again, this is what human beings believe here. We're all in the room. And we believe AI, cloud, blockchain, all this innovation, where are they happening? Cyberspace is the future. And it costs $10 billion, 3 times higher than a bank. So I will advocate that we should all play a role in start regulating the fundamentals, how internet is working. So that's one. Secondly, moreover, besides the domain registrations, how DNS server is being run. Again, I will also questions. The DNS company, they are huge. If you look, again, I think if you compare the data, 20 years ago, if you look at Fortune 10, what are those companies? Banks, oil and gas company, right? If you look at the Fortune 10 today, or at least Fortune 5, what are those companies? All are digital companies. Apple, Google, Alibaba, Tencent, Microsoft. Again, the word shift. Again, I think there's a calling for demand to really go into the fundamentals, how internet is run, is being used. And if you and I are human beings believe that that is the new world that we're heading into, we should start loving it. We need to love the new world that we're going to create. So yeah, that will be my view. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Sounds we have lots to catch up. And before we would like to even explore further the worst case scenario. If we were to encounter a security issue in DNS, to what extent could it potentially impact the security of our data?
Well, that's a huge issue. Like you can imagine, like all of us here, you go to your browser, so as everyone, again, if DNS has been abused, all the result of DNS is going to be like not accurate. So thinking about you going to HSBC now, I'm sorry to use HSBC as an example, or any banks, or any e-banking portal, you think you're accessing the server hosted by HSBC, but it's not, right? It has been poisoned. So again, the fundamental is important, and the impact of that is millions. And if you think about it, if we are going to Web3, the Web3 will introduce, that means certain centralized function will become decentralized. For example, you're talking about DeFi. DeFi is introduced to replace maybe some of the people think that the cost of a bank is too high, maybe. Okay, we can debate about that. Okay, so, but Web3 is going in. The control will become even more decentralized and relying on all of us, individual relying on the basic of how internet is working. So again, if that thing kicks in and is not protected and is not regulated, the standard is not being baseline, I do foresee that more and more victims will happen.
Totally agree. Thanks, Katie, again for your professional views and insights for our participants. And Katie just opened another topic for us. We all just discussed on the threats and opportunity challenges about the data security or what we are now facing. However, what will happen next when technological development advances to the next level? As Katie mentioned, we are expecting that evolving technologies and architectures could help safeguarding data security, especially in Web3 and the next generation of our internet. Keith, do you think, say for example, the blockchain and the decentralized technologies could be a solution to the sensitive data security or make our internet more safe?
First of all, I think every generation of new technology solve the problem we see from the previous technology, right? But at the same time, like blockchain, it doesn't solve all the security problem. It's creating new problem as well. Like blockchain, theoretically, the data inside is safe, it's secure, it's true in some way. But don't remember when we put the service or the so-called the application, like DeFi, the application on top of the blockchain network. At the end of the day, it's still applications. You still have someone to develop the applications. You still come across the software vulnerability issue, right? If you don't develop the app securely, even though the data you put inside a blockchain is secure, but someone can get access to data through the applications. And if you know one, like in the internet world too, like we always talk about the OWASP top 10, talking about the top 10 security problem from the internet. Now in blockchain, in the blockchain community, they also have so-called the DASP top 10. It's talking about the top 10 security problem in blockchain network. For example, one of the things is Kansai code injections, and also the broken access control. You can name it, but I would suggest if you're interested on this part, you can go to search the ASP top 10. You can learn about the top 10 security problem that the community find on the blockchain network. Like the smart contract, right? And also it's a good example. Smart contract is not something like the contract. It's actually a piece of code. There's a combined line of codes to determine how you can authorize to use the data or application in the blockchain. But like just in like 2021, I think the middle of 2021, there's an incident, security incident. It's because the smart contract is not well defined inside the code, and eventually caused about like a 1.5 billion loss because of the insecure smart contract. So blockchain, in some sense, is increased the security, but it doesn't solve all the security problem that we see, even the problem we see today. Yeah.
All right. Yes. Thanks, Keva. As we continue our exploration of the Web3 and its implication, and I have a question in mind for KT. And do you think will the burden and responsibility of data protection shift from enterprise to individuals in this transformation? And how it impact the changing behavior of decentralization at individual user level?
Yeah, so thank you again, Reiman, for your question. So again, my view is very, very similar. I think if things go decentralized, the control will go decentralized. Maybe just a question for everyone. Now there's a lot of decentralized apps also. I mean, you're using, maybe I just raise a hand. How many of you actually use two-step verification for your social media account? Oh, it's quite a lot. This is a professional team. I'd be surprised if you go to a non-IT forum or a more business type of forum. I mean, not many people would have heard of what is that term, right? And this is, to me, if you ask me, if today you don't have two-step or you don't have MFA, I guarantee you'll be hacked, for sure, okay? So many of compromised credentials leaking around, lazing around in the dark web and the internet, you know, I can guarantee you that I have your credential. You know, it's very simple. At least you have LinkedIn here, right? LinkedIn got hacked twice. I always say that. This is a good example. And correspondingly, your LinkedIn account and your credential is out there. And chance of human being using a similar password across your social media account is very high, unless the last two digits different. Also easily guessable. So again, my view is that if Web3 kicks in, a lot of control, depending on how the Web3 application being used, So in the past, I'm not saying Web3 is a bad thing, but again, we need to educate the consumer or the user of it. So in the past, if you think about it like bank is, again, what I say, highly regulated. If there's no MFA for third party, I'm sure Hong Kong MA will come after them in Hong Kong. Very simple. They even go down to granularity in terms of MFA. What is the time limit of the expiration of the one-time code? Right, that's the regulation being set for some of the centralized organizations. So again, Web3 I think is good. I personally support Web3 because I think certain centralization organization, I think the trust is in question, my view. I don't trust them anymore. Second, the cost of trust is too high. For example, when I transfer something, it takes me 8 days and you charge me a lot of money where I can do this in 1 second without any charge. So I do believe that Web3 will create a lot of efficiency, a lot of benefit. I think it will generate a lot more innovations, use cases. But I would also think that if that day comes, the consumer will need to be well educated. And the DAO, just now Kev was mentioning about the smart contract. In a way, blockchain has a secure means of transact. But when to write to the chain, it depends on the DAO, like what is the business rule, who has the consensus, then we write the transaction. Again, that can be exploited. Again, like what Kev was just mentioned. So again, I would say that if all this is proven, people are well educated, then I think we can enjoy all the Web3 from that innovation. Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you, Katie. Your input is very solid. And obviously, the individual will be increasingly vulnerable to the cyber attacks in future, especially on their mobile devices. How it become more important for us to know what we could do to prevent our data. And I think, Harry, would you share with us some tips for individual to secure the mobile device?
Thank you, Raymond. I think there are many things can be done. It all depends each individual's risk tolerance. I'm going to just mention some of the key ones. So first of all, only download apps from a trusted source and also from a trusted developer, and only if necessary. And remember, when a product is free, it could be the most expensive product. So second, make sure your OS and apps are up to date, and you should give up your phone if it's already reached the end of life. Number three, install an anti-malware product on your mobile, or some of the more sophisticated like MTD or EDR on your mobile device. And number four, try to separate your business life from your personal life. That's probably it's a bit hard for some of the people who don't like to carry 2 phones, but some may even carry 3 phones, I will tell you. But at the end of the day, right, as I said, it all depends on how much risk, what's your risk appetite. Last but not least, secure your backend infrastructure, which is some of us may overlook. If you connect to an insecure Wi-Fi, if you connect to a LAN, which is insecure, your data can be intercepted. Then your mobile data can also be stolen. So invest on some of the protection, just like make sure your DNS is secure, make sure your LAN is secure, make sure you have a firewall, DNS, DLP, etc., etc. And also, if you're an enterprise, invest the tools to manage your mobile device, such as UEM, MDM, and EMM, etc., etc. Thank you.
We have very useful takeaway from Harry. Thank you, Harry. And technology continues to advance. We may soon visit the public services and or our hospital with our avatar in the metaverse, which may go beyond even our imagination, meaning that the technological development is never end. And whether we catch up or not, we have to. So does the domain of cybersecurity and data security. To navigate and steer our next move, we need the talent and experts from professional industry. May further advise us any tips on what you mentioned about cultivating the tech-savvy leadership in our organization?
Thank you, Raymond. I think there's several ways I think need to really try to just some tips from my experience. First of all, I think need to have a good way to really articulate what's happening in the world. So I think you need to really keep in mind of what's the developings in the world, such as the increasing political tensions that could cause those supply chain risks, potential product brands, and also need to understand the deglobalization situations and all those dynamics in terms of what's happening. Secondly, I think you need to really be humble to build a good relationship with the business leaders to make sure you can get the sounding board and get the support from the business. And also need to understand the business vision and make sure your plan, your program is directly to contribute to the business goal. The third is to have maintain your skill on the storytelling, because many times you need to really go to the board and sell your budget requests. Make sure you have a good storytellers to tell a good story so that you can get your financial, your budget fundings to support your cybersecurity initiative. And finally, I think as a CISO, you have to make sure you keep your physical body healthy and also mentally healthy, because in a recent conference, someone told me that more than 40% of the CISO have some of the issue, pressure, alcohol, drugs, things like that. I'm not the 40% for sure. So really need to keep a very healthy, both mentally and physically, through some of the regular exercise. And finally, I think to really enjoy the moments and try to be make friends with all the great minds just like this stage, so that you can learn from them on the daily basis. Thank you.
Oh, great, thanks. Really thanks for our panel speakers, and I think we have very thorough, deep discussion in this area. And here we come with our Q&A section. And may I ask from the floor, will you have any questions for our speakers? And if any, you may just send through from the question platform. All right, I see a question here from the floor that you mentioned about the Innovative Technology and Industrial Bureau of Hong Kong SAR and the Cyberspace Administration of China. They recently signed a memorandum to facilitate the cross-border information flow for the ongoing development of the Greater Bay Area. Is there any potential data security consideration in cross-border data flow, with the Hong Kong entity receiving data from the mainland more susceptible to data compromise? So can our speaker, anyone would like to take this question?
Maybe I can share some of my minds, and then maybe others can contribute on that. So first of all, I really appreciate this arrangement. This is very good, because we're always talking about the data transfer, across borders. With the objective to really serve our citizens in Hong Kong and also in the mainland. So I think with this arrangement in place, I think this is good to have this regulatory landscape being ready on that. I would expect that with more regulation coming up, so that in one hand you can do the data exchange, but in other hand you have to make sure you can, I think other panelists talk about, to demonstrate the trust and really to show the way we really preserve the trust, the privacy, the data privacy, and the data securities through these data exchange. I think this is very important. And second, I would say that once there's more data exchange, I think there will be those entities in Hong Kong, in mainland, they will become another high value targets from the cyber attack, so that when you do this kind of thing, you have to really reassess your current security postures. And I think there will be more control to be in place, such as the data tokenizations, encryptions, and also make sure you have a better key management and so on. And also because they will involve other parties, so that they're focusing on the third-party risk, because even you have a very strong security, but if your counterparts have do not have the same level of the security, they will also become a weakest link on that. Thank you.
Any other?
Maybe I can give some more from my view, is I think you may heard that like in China, in mainland, they have a lot of like a cybersecurity related law, like data security law. So, but in Hong Kong, we don't have right now. So when you're having like a data exchange with the company from China or getting the data from the citizen in China, so be aware about the regulation in China. This is one thing, because as long as you get the data from them, you need to make sure that you follow by their requirement to protect the data, how you use the data, and you also need to get a consent to share the data if you need to. So this is also one mechanism, not just talking about technology, but also looking at the like a regulation requirement to make sure the data you get is being secure, is used with the right authority. Yeah.
And there's another follow-up question. Therefore, I just want to ask, how can an organization can mitigate the potential data security risk to ensure that's what Thula mentioned, to maintain the customer trust? Because the people in Hong Kong has high expectation on the data privacy. Can you take this, E.T.?
Yeah, sure.
How to mitigate the risk?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, it's not an easy task, to be honest, but I always tell my clients, think about the data that you need to collect first. If you don't need to collect, the more that you collect, the more obligation you have, right? So I think that's the first step that you can consider. So obviously, if you need to collect that, you need to exercise controls to protect it. Obviously, if you need to start doing sharing, just now echoing what Fuller was saying, I think sanitization is a very good technique. Whether you want to tokenize it, you know, with basically you change one sensitive number into another number. Of course, you have certain way to reverse it back because you need to identify back that person. So when you tokenize certain thing or you sanitize the information, or you pseudonymize them, or whatever term you want to use, so you basically make the value of data become zero or not that important anymore. So that makes your work easier. So I think to me is that start with a easier bunch of information. Don't over collect and sanitization techniques. And with the remaining you can't. You really need that. Then of course I would probably use the word what Kev was mentioning, like zero trust concept in protecting your environment. Although, of course, zero trust has a lot of things to do. It's not a very easy task, but I would say that should be the directions. Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone has any input?
And another thing is think about security by design. Yeah, everything you build, the infrastructure, the application, whatever you build, that digital related, that data related, think about security by design. Always talk about the worst case scenario, right? Think all the possibility that the hacker will come to this if there is vulnerabilities, if there is like a human mistake. And then once you understand all those risks, implement technology process to prevent those risks, that it will help you. Yeah.
So anyone has another key message you want to share with our four?
So I just want to write on other speakers just mentioned about people process technology. So there's sometimes there's a misconcept when company invest in the technology, problem solve. But I think the people and the procedure are as important. That's number one. The second thing I want to write on is regarding third-party risk. I think it is important to maybe embed some of this security requirement in your agreement with your vendors, including maybe not limited to a data breach notification, maybe annual audit, and not only on your vendor, but your vendor's vendor, because your vendor security may also rely on their vendor as well. And this may often be overlooked. And then another point is the tone from the top is important, because without the tone from the top, it is very hard to implement cybersecurity, no matter whether we have the budget, the resources, and people. That's it, I guess. Thank you.
Raymond, can I supplement something on
Sure.
that? Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Yeah, so I just want to supplement a very good point that Harry just mentioned about a third-party risk is that if I mean, just now I'm talking about the domain name abuse, and I'm calling for, more regulations in that part. You may sound a bit negative, a bit pessimistic, because it sounds like it's not being handled properly, at least from my perspective for the time being. The other thing that I probably would call that out from a third-party perspective is that if you're really spending, while you're thinking about doing your security architecture, you're spending money to do this, whether hire people or buy this or set up this process, make sure that, I always tell people in the past, if you got $10, okay, you spend money to prevent. Okay, I always tell my clients now, you have to tell yourself, you cannot prevent, cannot. You have to spend maybe $6 to prevent and $4 to detect. Okay, that's the very, very important thing. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because the single and other very pessimistic issue is, again, is stalemate, is 0 day. You are using today all the software you come with 0 day. And simply because 0 day exists today, and it becomes even more prevalent, and I will expect you'll keep becoming even more and more prevalent, is because bug bounty process is completely disrupted. Ask yourself questions. The highest bug bounty in the world now is Apple, $1 million. If you have a bug critical for Apple for $1 million, will you give it to Apple? $1 million. Not bad money. Yeah, you can buy an apartment here, or you start to, first installment is done. $1 million. Of course, I will not. There are more people who will pay me more than $1 million. Apple. Come on, who doesn't use Apple? Probably largest mobile device in the world. So what happened is that they don't even have that 0 day. They don't even have that bug. That means they can't even have that patch. But I have it. Thank you. If I'm the hacker. So again, you have to get yourself ready that all the software that you're using, unless you create your own, but most of us here, we are consumer of IT products. So you have to make an assumption that your product that you are using, that you install today, comes with a backdoor. And the only way that you can compensate the rate is to detect abnormal. You expect people will come, right? That's why I tell people in the past, $10 to prevent. Now, $10, $6 to prevent, or maybe $5. I don't have a magic number, but $4 need to go into detective. Hopefully that's going to be helpful. Third-party risk. All the software are third-party. Thank you.
You have some more?
I think last point for me is that to make sure you focus on the cyber resilience. I think all the panelists talk about that. So prepare someone already in your network. And so I think you just make sure you have a good capability to do the detection and respond, and also test your resilience plans. Not only test your IT, but also work with the business in a worst scenario when you are restoring your system, what the business can do and should do in a worst scenario, and make sure you have this cyber resilience capability to keep your lights on.
All right, I think it's about time. Before the end of our discussion section, let me wrap up our panel discussion. The data security concern really every individual, organization, and enterprise. And criminals are targeting the sensitive from everyone and everywhere because the data is just so valuable. And our guests share with us more type of data breaches and the good practice to improve our data security program measures and help us to reduce the risk of cyber attacks. And we mentioned mobile device data security remain a big concern. And besides shifting from the traditional intellectual wealthy, the individual has more responsibilities to safeguard their own sensitive data as well as the mobile device. I think the corporates need better governance and more preparedness for digital transformation. And well, I think the discussion can still be open for your thinking if it's good to have kind of regulation on data protection or protection of the use of data. Anyway, we thank again for gentlemen for sharing their expert insights. And may I have your big claps for our esteemed speakers again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, all our guests. Would you please step forward to pose for a group photo together? Thank you for the invaluable sharing and insightful discussion. Thank you, gentlemen. Please step forward and closer. And then please face our official camera. Thank you very much, Mr. Raymond Lam, for moderating the section for us. And thank you once again to all our panelists for the wonderful discussion. Let us give another big round of applause to thank our moderator and our panelists. Thank you so much. Please proceed downstage. Thank you so much. And now it is the Q&A with gift section. Later on the screen, the QR code now displayed. Please enter the WhatsApp chat room and send your answer to us. The person who answers correctly and the fastest will be the winner. And then our colleague will contest the winner directly for the gift redemption. If you're ready, let's take a look on the first question. We have 2 questions in total. The first question is, which of the following is or are the methods of the data protection? A, access control. B, encryption. C, secure API. Or D, all of the above. Please send us the answer right now. Without further ado, let's move on to the next question. The second question is, which of the following is a potential consequence of a data breach? A, increased customer trust. B, improved reputation of the affected company. C, financial losses and legal liabilities. Or D, increased sales and revenue. Our colleague will contact our winner directly for the gift redemption. Thank you so much for your participation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of all the sections in this room. You are more than welcome to join our last panel discussion for the Forum on Digital Transformation in Emerging Asia, Opportunities and Challenges in the next room at N106. Before you leave the venue, please be reminded to take all your belongings and get the gifts and certificates redemption voucher at the exit. Thank you once again for joining us at this APAC DNS Forum 2023. I hope you have a wonderful and insightful experience in this forum as well as in Hong Kong. See you soon. Thank you so much.